Strike up the band.
Believe it or not, I once started a marching band. People said I was crazy for doing it. I used to be against it because I had seen too many directors who burned out because of it. But then I saw how much good it could do. And yes, you have to be aware of burnout, but you have to also remember you control the program. You control the program, not anybody else. You control the program, and everybody is going to be at different levels and different abilities when they're starting out something like this and different points in their life. So you have to keep that in mind. Tip number 1, start small. When I first started, all we did was parades, and we only practiced one day a week. I still had small kids at home. I wanted to be there 4 days of the week for them when they got home from elementary school. I had 2 that were still in elementary. And I made sure to do music that wasn't too hard, and we only practiced one day a week. It was okay that we had no guard. We had no other coach. It was just me. And all we focused on was doing a parade. We had 18 people that first year. And the second year, we had 24. And then eventually, my kids got older, the program grew, and by our 7th year, we had 44, and we made it to state qualifying. Sometimes when you start small, you may have to do less songs. Really focus on doing music that's not too hard. That was my mistake early on, is sometimes we did music that was too hard. Try a simpler show. Don't make it too complex. We went on to that 8th and 9th and 10th year after that and had numbers in the 60s. Number 2, you set the practices. You set the level of commitment. You set the goals. All of those things are done by you. So you can make it fit with where your program is, because there is no right or wrong answer. Where are you at in your life? Did you just get married? Do you have little kids? Are you an empty nester now and you have more time? Maybe you're single and you're not interested in having a dating life. Whatever your situation might be, it's going to be different than mine. Maybe you have health problems and that takes up a lot of your time. Even the students would get to understand the level of commitment and how it was different, because sometimes a student would come to me and say something like, Mr. Devine, why can't we be like insert name of award-winning school here? And so I would explain to the students what that school's practice schedule was like. And I said, that's probably what it would take for us to get to their level. And without exception, this probably happened a dozen times throughout the time I taught there and taught marching band. The students would say, never mind, I like it where we're at right now. So they understood too that there was a trade-off. And it's not that there's a right or wrong answer for either one, but those schools sometimes that are making it to state, they're obviously not going to do that by just having one practice a week like I started with. But that's where we started at, and that's where we were at. Number 3, you can have high standards no matter where you're at, based on where you start. So for example, if you're just learning the basics because nobody has ever marched before and you're starting a brand new program from scratch, you're going to start at those basics and eventually work at more advanced. You may have high standards for performance and attendance as well, but I want to share with you a story of a drum major I had. His name was Josh, and he had come to us from a big, huge program in Texas. And he said something about, our students just aren't memorizing the music like they should. And I said, well, Josh, we work on it every day, and that's why we spend that time rehearsing it and running it through and having them turn their stands around. We had a procedure in place to help students memorize their music. But Josh, who had made drum major, he wanted to really step this up. And he said, no, we need to give them a test on their music and then cut them from the band if they don't pass it. And I had to explain to him, I said, Josh, where you came from, you had 200 plus in marching band. And if they had to cut 10 or 15 people because they couldn't quite cut it on their music, they still had plenty of people for the show. In fact, he had told me that they had kind of like understudies. There were some people who weren't on the main team, but they were ready to jump in if someone was sick or gone, so that they always had a show of 180 or whatever it might be. And I said he wanted to just kick people out if they couldn't memorize their music. And we had a band of 24 that year. And I said, Josh, 18 of them are going to not be able to play their music, and then we're not going to have a marching band. And so he got that. And then later we made some higher standards about memorizing music. I think we had one point where we would do some testing on it, and there would be kind of like remedial training if you didn't have it memorized yet. But it adapted with our program. We didn't start off as trying to be like the band from Texas that Josh was from. Number 4, find the right event. We started with small, very local parades, and the communities we were part of, they just loved it. And because we showed up looking professional, they loved that we came and dressed up for their event. We actually did some events called the Friendship Cup. I'm not sure if those are a nationwide thing, but in the Friendship Cup, it was based on band size, not school size. And so we felt like we were more within our league with schools who had similar programs to the size that we had. Number 5, steal, beg, and borrow equipment. I had no equipment, and I'm very sorry, but this disturbs me that some people will say maybe their school is pushing them to start a marching band, and they'll put together a budget, and they'll say, well, unless you can give me $50,000, there's no way we can start a marching band program. And that they can make it look justified on paper, but I think they're not really being true to their community. If their community wants it, and I'm not saying not to be realistic about some of the costs involved, but you can also make a lot of things work. So we still begged and borrowed. We got our first set of marching band drums for about $400. This was about 2010 or so. I bought a used podium from somebody for $100. And the sousaphones we got for very cheap because a school that had a bigger budget than us, obviously, had bought all brand new ones, and they were selling their used ones cheap. We bought some marching baritones one year from a university a couple of hours away from us. Same thing. They had the budget to buy brand new ones, and we bought their used ones, and those were very helpful to us. So start with something with what you can get by with, and then add to that. We didn't stay with that $100 podium forever. We ended up expanding and having a better podium, but that first one, that suited us for several years. And that brings me to uniforms. Our first uniform was a white polo that had a logo that we had created. I think the shirt company created for us. It cost us about $20. I think nowadays they're probably about $35. And we wore that with black slacks and black shoes. Eventually we found some used uniforms. There's some sites out there that people will sell their used marching band uniforms. And we found one that the school had our color, and we got 200 sets of uniforms for $2,500. What a bargain. What a bargain. 200 of them were almost, not 200, but many of them were almost brand new, and the majority of them were just lightly used. There were about 20 that you could tell were heavily used, and we weren't able to really put those to use. I think we hung on to them for a while, and then finally one year cleaning up, we said we just got to get rid of these because they were obviously had been used quite heavily. So we got 180 very good usable uniforms for about $2,500, less than $100. About $15 per uniform. That's a pretty good deal. I hope that these tips have been helpful. And if you want to talk some more about starting a marching band, please give me a call or send me an email.
The Music and Podcast, where you get quick and easy tips for how to be a better band team.